Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to another episode of This Week in Travel. My name is Gary Arndt, coming to you from beautiful Girona, Catalonia, where I just got to celebrate Three Kings Day. They don't really do Christmas here so much, but they got a really big Three Kings Day celebration. And it's the day after Three Kings Day, so that means great day after Three Kings Day sales in all the malls here in Catalonia. And you think that's a joke, but it's actually not. This is actually when they have their sales. With me again, as usual, is the man so nice they named him twice, Mr. Chris Christensen. How is your 2015 going, Chris?
So far, it is going terrific.
Have you reached that age, because I think I'm kind of there now, where every New Year it's like, okay, my tombstone will at least say 2015 on it.
No, I can't say that I have.
You made it that year. You made it.
Apparently, you're going to be passing me up in age there, Gary. But
hey, Gary, aren't you at the age where you've realized that there are a certain number of baseball Hall of Famers that are younger than you?
Pedro Martinez. Well, no, I just and that of course is the lovely Jen Leo. I posted on my Facebook wall today that I remember when Ken Griffey Jr. was in the majors, and he was a major league player at 19, and he's 3 years younger than I am. And I was really weirded out by that at the time. Pedro Martinez just made the Hall of Fame, is 2 years younger than I am. He retired kind of early. So there's now somebody in the Baseball Hall of Fame younger than me, which is kind of sobering.
Yeah, it got there a decade ago, so no sympathy here.
It happens.
It happens.
And that's it for introductions. It's just the three of us today, ringing in the new year on our own. Not something we do that often, but we do it every so often. And it's nice and cozy.
Well, also, it's been so long since we recorded, we just missed
sometimes
everybody.
We're lucky if we can just get the three of us. The one thing, we've gotten some grief from people for when are you going to record again, and we apologize. It is really hard sometimes with three schedules and traveling and time zones to find a time that we can all get together. So, but remember, this is This Week in Travel. We never promised you every week in travel.
That's
nice
right.
One. Nice one.
And normally I'm the limiting reagent in this reaction, but lately it hasn't been me. I've actually been sitting on my butt here the whole time. You guys have been more busy than I have.
I've been ill for 3 weeks, so maybe that's partially why I haven't initiated. Chris, you've been actually traveling.
Only locally, in California.
Still on the go.
Yeah.
Oh, let's do a couple news stories. This one from Travel Mole, I thought it just raised more questions than it answered. An Arizona woman has been reunited with her lost luggage that was misplaced 20 years ago. Now, the question I have is, where has this been sitting for 20 years?
Well, they said they recently reorganized the Tucson airport, and apparently they found, I'm going to guess, a whole room. It's like, oh, we used to put lost luggage over here or something. Or, that dusty bag in the back that no one ever checked to see, but when they went to empty the room, it's like, look, we've got one left over.
Well, she was coming back from a trade show in Las Vegas, so what gets shipped to Vegas stays in Vegas.
Okay, but here's the other question. So why aren't there 1,000 people that got 20-year-old luggage suddenly popping out of the woodwork? Why just this one woman? I mean, in 2 decades, nobody at the airport said, "Hey, Roy, you know that orange bag over there? I wonder what's in it." Because that's an entire career somebody could have worked at that airport. And you've got to go in at least the room once or twice, you'd think, right?
It's weird. It's weird. It gives me hope, though, for some luggage that I haven't seen, in about 10 years. So,
has anybody lost a bag on you? And I don't just mean put it on the plane behind you, but actually lost it.
So I went with a group of 10 people to Tanzania in 5-6 years ago or something like that. And by the time we got to Arusha, to the airport in Kilimanjaro, we had lost 10 of the 20 bags. And 9 of them we know we lost in Kenya because it's just a madhouse. I mean, it's just the most ridiculous system I've ever seen, where you basically pay somebody who's an expediter just to try and get any luggage on the plane. And one of the pieces of luggage, and those, 9 of them showed up the next day, so that's no big deal. But one of them has never been seen since. It was lost in London, and it followed us around for a little while, and then it went to Tucson, probably, where luggage goes to die.
There's all sorts of little accessories, travel accessories with, QR codes and apps and stuff where you can trace your luggage. Do you guys ever use any of those?
I do. I have a tag on my bag that's supposed to help it be tracked down.
Yeah,
well, the actual tracking devices are like the GPS ones that use like a 3G signal. Those are actually kind of expensive. And I've had bags delayed. But I don't think I've ever had anything delayed more than 24 hours. And just because of my Twitter account, when a bag is delayed, I start bitching about it immediately. And I kind of get kicked up the support ladder, so stuff tends to get fixed. But I went a long stretch, because I always check a bag, where I never had a bag for like 6 years, I think. And then I think it was 2013, I had like 3 or 4 incidents in 1 year where I had bags delayed. And then I haven't had one, I think, in the last year now.
And I hardly ever check a bag, so it's not that common for me.
I've had bags stolen, not at airports, but like out of the trunks of cars after I arrived and walked into a restaurant. That's happened to me twice.
8 years of traveling, I've had nothing stolen, haven't been robbed, haven't been mugged. So far, so good.
Good for you, Gary. I hope 2015 is not the year that starts. I hope we haven't jinxed you by just even talking about it in your presence.
Guys have tried, but I just stare them down. I'm just like, is this the day, buddy?
Do you feel lucky?
You messed with the wrong tourist.
Let's talk about another in-flight passenger gone wrong.
This one never quite got off the ground. But there was a passenger in China who the plane was kind of sitting on the taxi, and the cabin was kind of stuffy, so he opened up the door, and they have pictures of it. The guy I have to think that this is just a case of a guy who maybe hasn't flown before, or just wasn't used to it, because it didn't appear to be anything malicious. It seemed like he just thought he'd open up the door for a bit.
Yeah, I noticed they actually kept him on the flight. They didn't kick him off. They didn't arrest him. They did seat him as far away from the emergency exit as possible.
Maybe it was one of those things where the flight attendant was like, you're sitting in an exit row. Are you capable of doing this? And he just wanted to prove that he could.
I do not know.
You have to admit, wouldn't you at some point in your life love to open the door? Even if it wasn't on a real flight, just to do it once.
So, he was a first-time flyer, it did say. So, didn't know.
Okay, I can barely contain myself. Can I introduce the one we're going to talk about next?
Yes.
Go for it.
I don't know which one of you guys found it. Must have been Chris. But this is the first time
anybody but me find any of the stories?
Yes. Well, yes. Thank you, Chris, for finding this. This is hilarious. It is photos of airplane passenger shaming.
Oh gosh. Be careful if you go to that link. You can't unsee some of those.
No, you can't. So this was actually an article in the Union Tribune out of San Diego, and what they've done is they've got a Facebook page and an Instagram page where people take photos of people that are just so shameful. Well, they're shaming the passengers for their in-flight atrocities. And so you're seeing half-dressed people, babies throwing tantrums in the aisles, more half-dressed people. So if you go to Instagram.com, it's /passenger shaming.
It's a lot.
Are you looking, Gary? I expect
it's a lot of people with legs up in the air.
Right.
Well, there's filth. There's like trash in the first class area. There's a guy scratching his butt down his pants. There's I don't think it's a big deal to have your feet up on the window. Is that really that bad? Somebody took a picture of somebody who had propped their feet up on the window.
That's Jen.
Yeah, it could be Jen. I do have red toenail polish.
I think some people just have a foot thing where the idea of bare feet grosses them out.
Oh yeah, there's one guy who's he's coming out of the bathroom in bare feet. But who are these people taking their shirts off, and this one person with their underwear showing off their tattoo? They're just standing there in their underwear. And it's not a pretty sight.
Well, I mean, if you're interested in stories of shameful passenger behavior, we've had her on before, but Betty in the Sky with Suitcase, her podcast is just filled with that. The one that she was telling in the last episode was, the couple who are, having relations in the seats, and they won't stop when the flight attendant is trying to get them to stop. And so one of the flight attendants, after trying to get them to stop multiple times, takes the guy's pants and flushes them down the toilet. And he doesn't notice until they go to land, and he's, rings the call. I can't find my pants, and my wife is meeting me.
Wouldn't that clog up an airplane toilet? A pair of pants?
Apparently, they had a really strong toilet at that point. So,
I guess. And I have to admit, I've taken my shoes off on flights.
I've taken my shoes off.
It's a long haul flight. It's not that big of a deal. I don't stick them up in the air or anything, but I've certainly done it. I don't think it's, that big of a deal.
Although there are other ones of people giving themselves a pedicure, and the kind of things that your nail polish is not something you want to be smelling on a flight.
No, and that's just wrong. That's just wrong. But you know what? I don't really like the ones of the guy with the hands down his pants. I don't.
And the thing is, it looks like he was sleeping.
Or he could just be posing for it.
This is probably the biggest real travel news item of the week. United Airlines and Orbitz is actually suing a guy, Dr. Zaman, who has a site called Skiplag that basically lets you find cheap flights where there's a connecting flight or there's a stop at an airport, but you just sort of get off. Technically, that's against some of the airline's rules, and they're suing this guy for doing this. Personally, I don't think the lawsuit has any merit because I don't know if he's breaking any law. Just telling people that this exists.
Right.
If anyone's breaking the rule, it would be the person who buys the ticket and gets off, not this guy. This sounds like just big companies that are kind of scaring him with a lawsuit.
I think that's what they were hoping, was that they would intimidate him rather than give him lots of free publicity. And we saw it, for instance, or I saw it in the Telegraph in the UK. So it's gotten him a lot of extra publicity and tens of thousands of dollars of money to defend it. From basically, he crowd shared his legal expenses, and a lot of people said they would be glad to support the site. So
this is called the Barbara Streisand effect.
Yeah, exactly. If they didn't know about it, they know about it now.
But check this out. So I just the site is still up. There's no problems there. And I just looked up San Diego to New York for Saturday, January 31st, and found a flight for $156.
What's the trick? Do you book a ticket to where?
Well, it goes from it's San Diego to Atlanta, and Atlanta to LGA, LGA to ROC. And so...
ROC.
Yeah, so where are you getting off in New York?
Well, you're getting off at LGA, which is LaGuardia.
Like New Rochelle or something like that? Or
probably.
Smaller airports?
That's what I'm
crazy.
guessing that is. Greater Rochester Airport. It's Rochester, New York.
And if you don't want to go to LaGuardia, they've got San Diego to LAX, LAX to JFK, JFK to Boston, $156.
Huh.
This is getting very exciting.
Yeah,
Are they going to prosecute any? Are they going to prosecute any of the people that are using it?
Well, here's the problem: they don't check you off an airplane, right?
Right.
At no point do they scan anything like as an exit. So they have absolutely no clue if you're getting on or off. And I'm not really sure why it matters.
Well, and obviously they're recommending you take your luggage with you.
Well, yeah, but
you do carry-on luggage when you're doing this sort of thing.
All right, so I just checked San Diego to London. Less exciting because it's over $1,000. So at that point, right? Where do you want to go, Chris? I'll look one up for you. SFO to where? Or SJC? You want SJC?
Sure. I don't know.
SJC to where?
I don't know where I want to go.
Chris, don't be so boring. Come on, where do you want to go?
Dulles. National.
What's
DC.
the DL? What?
WAS is Washington, all the Washington airports.
WAS. Okay. There you go.
If people aren't aware of that,
$162.
Really? Wow, that's pretty.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a one-way fare.
SJC to ORD, ORD to DCA, DCA to JFK, 162. Yeah, one way. But not bad spur of the moment. And say, you know how there's all those cheap flights that you can get from New York to, the Caribbean?
Right.
Yeah. How about that? One way there, and then just keep taking some one ways.
It's perfect for Gary, who doesn't buy a lot of round trip.
Why is Orbitz that bent out of shape? Because not that many people could possibly be using this site.
I wouldn't think so. Although now.
Well, the Orbitz is owned by the airlines.
Yeah.
So that's why. They're not a...
So on the site, he's asking people to donate to raise money for his lawsuit. How much money do you think he's raised so far?
I know it was tens of thousands. I think the last number I heard was 30,000. How much is it?
2,882 people have donated $61,428.
Good for him.
$61,428 in 1 month.
I got one more news story. This wasn't on the list we had beforehand, but we've talked a couple times on the show about people getting arrested or getting their stuff confiscated for taking photos. Some good news on that front. This is from the site Petapixel. Representative Steve Stockman of Texas has introduced the Ansel Adams Act into Congress, which would make it so you cannot get arrested or fined or have your equipment taken for taking pictures on public federal land, national parks, forests, anything. I think we had a story a couple weeks ago about an attempt to charge people for taking photos on National Forest Service land or something like that. And this would basically eliminate these fees and have it so if it's public, you can take photos. And cops couldn't confiscate your stuff or threaten you with any sort of action. So I hope something happens with it.
I love the way they name bills in Congress. It's the Photos Are Patriotic bill.
Well, of course. Who's against Ansel Adams? The Motherhood and Apple Pie bill. Well, anyways, this is our first show of 2015, and it's just the three of us. So, where did you guys go this last year? I mean, we kind of talk about it through all the shows, but what was kind of the summary of all the places you've been? Any one of you, Chris.
I'm trying to think of all the places I've been. I was in Dusseldorf for Carnival. I was in Jordan. I was in Mexico, Greece, and Iceland for conferences. I did a great road trip across the U.S. Actually, that was one of the fun trips that I did.
Not to mention Cancun and Greece for T-Bex.
I think I said Mexico. Cancun is in Mexico last I was there. Yeah. I think I did some other trips, but I only did 4 new countries this year. Oh, Sweden, West Sweden as well.
Jen, where did you get to this year?
I'd say probably the most exciting thing that happened to us this year is Cora turned into a little adrenaline junkie from ziplining in Costa Rica. So that was probably the most exciting trip for us. We were 2 weeks there, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? No, 2 weeks there. 2 weeks in Charleston, like we often go to Charleston. And then she also learned how to snorkel in Maui. And so between ziplining in Costa Rica and snorkeling in Maui, it was a big travel year for Cora. And at my stage in my life, that's just that is really exciting for me right now. I wasn't expecting Athens to blow me away when I was there for TBEX. Just seeing the Acropolis from all these different points of the city and at different times of the day. And I'm not a history buff at all, and it really moved me. So I was surprised by that, and it got me wondering, where else can I go where you have that kind of imposing history right in front of you? I don't have any answers yet. I haven't looked that deeply into it. Chris probably knows of 6 off the top of his hand.
Oh, Egypt, Rome, Istanbul.
Yeah, I haven't been to any of those places.
Petra was pretty awesome to go to. That certainly was a bucket place list for me. The 2 weirdest moments for me were not the places, though. It was, being paparazzi for the Pope, being a photojournalist for a day while the Pope and the royal family of Jordan went to the baptism site for Jesus, and then getting invited to the White House. I mean, those were the things that you cannot predict.
Chris, I think this has been your biggest travel year since we've been doing this podcast.
It was a big year. Yeah, actually, next year I've got more trips planned. So next year will probably be not a Gary year, but I have plans to be on 5 continents next year if it all works out. If I can figure out how to keep making a living while I do this, which is the challenge. But
wow, 5. That's a big deal.
Yeah, well, we have an amateur traveler trip coming up in April to Morocco.
Is it still open?
There are still spots. There's it's about half full right now, so there's enough that we're doing it for sure. But I think there are still 8 spots on it. And then my wife and I and 2 friends are doing a cruise to South America coming up here in February, leaving on Valentine's Day. And then I'm planning on going to all 3 TBEXs, so that's Thailand, Spain, and then something in North America. Don't know where that one is yet.
And so now, if everybody has unblocked 30 minutes of their time, we can now go over Gary's yearly list.
Well, Gary's year coming up, I don't think you have that much planned, do you, yet?
Coming up, no. My goal is to travel less, and I think there aren't many people that have that as a goal.
I don't know, broken record. I think I heard that last.
Mock him, yeah. Although he has, to be fair, he has been traveling less the last month.
Last 2 months, I've been in Girona.
Yeah.
I just, haven't left this little province.
So does that mean you're going back in May?
Yeah, that's my plan. I'll be back. Probably doing something with TBEX, although don't know what yet. But between now and then, so that's like the 1st of May, I will be. So Friday, I'm going to Finland for a week. There's a conference there. And I fly back to Girona. And then at the end of the month, I'll leave here and I go to Alberta, and I'll photograph the Rocky Mountains. And then I will probably go through Wisconsin, and then I'll go to Florida. I'll drive around southern Florida for a week. Going to visit Dry Tortugas and Biscayne National Park. Haven't been either of those. And I go to Haiti for the very first G Adventures tour ever to Haiti. I'll be on that. And then, so that'll end in the beginning of March, and then I really don't have anything scheduled until April. So I was thinking I could fly out of Port-au-Prince and maybe go to Jamaica, because I've never been to Jamaica, and then maybe to Santiago or Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. I don't know. I'll kind of just make that up as I go along. But I don't plan on going anywhere other than that little area. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff in April. There's New Media Expo. Might go to the SATW Editors Council.
Wait a second. Were all those places only taking you through April?
Yeah.
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 Alberta.
So again, he doesn't have that much travel schedule.
Alberta, Florida, Haiti. That's 3 months. It's 4 months.
That is slowing him down a lot.
Can you consider how many places I went to in 2014? I went to Australia, Canada, the United States, Mexico, Turks and Caicos, Bermuda, Germany, Qatar, South Africa, Lesotho, Swaziland, Namibia, St. Helena, Angola, Republic of Congo, Sao Tome Principe, Benin, Togo, Ghana, Sierra Leone, the Gambia, Senegal, Western Sahara, Canary Islands, Morocco, Spain, France, Jersey, Guernsey, Ireland, Malta, Cyprus, Northern Cyprus, Greece.
Okay, so Gary, blah, 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 you had this big ass list, right? Chris had a very concise, amazing memories from his about the Pope and about the White House. And so do you have any sort of pull out memories from that long, long, long list of places that you went?
Oh, sure. I would say the West Africa trip I took was probably the highlight of the year.
Okay,
because
good.
that was I got to see a lot of places that people never visit and never will visit. And with the recent Ebola stuff, they don't want to visit, and which is too bad because I really think that it's a part of the world that has really suffered a lot. It's it doesn't have a lot going for it, but I thought like Sierra Leone was a really beautiful place. I thought the people were really nice, and I'd love to go back. I really would. I could easily see doing that in maybe 2016 or something. St. Helena was quite an experience. Nothing quite like that I've ever seen before. A place so isolated, and the people are so unique. I've never met a group of the entire population of the native people from St. Helena are all mixed race people. And it's all because of the history of the island, of the immigration of the British there, and then there was slavery on the island, and then freed slaves coming to the island, and then they just kind of stayed, and rather than creating their own communities, everybody just married each other, had kids, and then some Chinese people came to the island, and they just got merged in, and so they've created this culture and this group that is just completely unique, and the history of the island is really reflected literally in the faces of the people, and I've never seen anything quite like that. Big road trip I took through Canada and the western U.S. That was getting up to Nahanni National Park. That's quite frankly one of the greatest places, one of the greatest national parks in the world, one of the greatest places in North America, and nobody even knows about it. Most people have never heard of it.
How many people did you say go there in a year? It's like 8,000 or something like that?
800.
800.
And you can't drive there. There's no roads.
Right.
You have to take a float plane in. And the float plane from the nearest community of Fort Simpson, Northwest Territories, it's like 50 miles away. So you have to fly 50 miles just to cross into the park boundary. So it's an all-day. I think they said we ended up flying round trip of the total mileage put on by the plane was close to 400 to 500 miles that day. And we just basically did a one-day tour of the park, and that's all it was. But Virginia Falls in the park has a water flow that is basically the same as Victoria Falls in Africa. And everybody knows about Victoria Falls. Nobody's ever heard of Virginia Falls. And it's as tall as Niagara Falls. No one's ever heard of it. And it's just, there were canyons, like little Grand Canyons. And someone said it's like the best of Yosemite, the best of the Grand Canyon, and the best of Yellowstone, all in one place. And it's just completely unknown. And that was amazing. Wood Buffalo also, which straddles Alberta and Northwest Territories. Nobody goes there either. It's the largest national park outside of Greenland in the world. Even unknown by people in like Alberta who live there, because that gets to like 1,500 people a year too. So, yeah, those are some of the highlights. And the big kind of thing I was surprised by, because I wasn't even supposed to go there, was when I was there with Chris, is in Mediora in Greece.
Oh yeah.
My plan was to drive up to Serbia, and that got nixed. So I was like, the guy from the Mediora tour was like, "Well, come to Mediora, just come on Monday." So I was like, "All right." And I actually ended up shooting there for 3 different days and got some fantastic photos. Really kind of glad I went in hindsight because it was well worth it.
It's a stunning place. Stunning. Absolutely gorgeous. And the people were great too. George and I always forget his brother's name. Vangelis.
Gary, I don't think I heard you. I could have sworn maybe this is already not last year, but the year before. What was that island that you loved so much that began with a D? Dominica? How do you pronounce it?
Yeah, Dominica in the Caribbean.
Yeah, wasn't that one of your favorites?
That was last year. That was 2013. But
okay.
Yeah, that's it's one of the least visited islands in the Caribbean. And the reason it gets so few visitors is actually pretty straightforward. They just don't have a runway big enough to support large jets. So I don't think there are any direct flights coming from the United States. To get to Dominica, you have to first fly to another nearby island and then get on a smaller plane to get there. Or there's a ferry service that goes from Martinique and Guadeloupe. But again, most people don't do that. But it's just a very mountainous island. Hot springs, they even have a boiling lake, which is not a euphemism. Like the water is like almost boiling. And people get there and I guess it's like, oh, I'm going to put my feet in the lake. And no, you can't do that. You have to get like stretchered out if it's that hot. But it's a fantastic island. Yeah, it's just one of those places that, and I've really noticed in the course of traveling, it's the places that take a little bit of effort to get to are the ones that are usually the most special. And it's places like Nahani or in the Pacific. I really enjoyed like Micronesia, which is actually not hard to get to. It's just a matter of booking a flight, but you got to go through Hawaii or Guam, which are both tourist destinations, and most people just don't bother to do it.
I think for me, for surprises, well, you mentioned Meteor, but I already knew I wanted to get there. I just didn't think I was going to go there on that trip. So that was less of a surprise. It was awesome. But Luxembourg, I went there when I was in Dusseldorf, and it's a gorgeous place. I really don't know why you haven't heard more about Luxembourg, especially the Luxembourg city is this incredibly, the history is interesting, but it's just a spectacularly beautiful city as it's on a rock promontory. It was part of a big fortress area, and that was what made it so special at the time in the sort of the 1700s, 1800s, 1600s even. And there's not a whole lot left of the fortress itself, the walls, but there's still this natural defenses and these very spectacular spires. And even in February, which I'm not sure is not the prettiest time in Luxembourg, it was gorgeous.
So how far in advance do you guys plan your next year's travels? I only have one country on the books. I've got a multi-generational trip with my family in Italy in June. And that's the only thing that's booked, and it probably wouldn't have even been booked if my cousins hadn't done it 4 or 5 months ago. I don't even know how long ago.
Well, the Morocco trip was booked a year ahead because we're trying to take other people with it. It's amazing how much time some people need.
Right, but that's also you're taking a bunch of people, and they have to ask for vacation time off, and
right.
And
even
Gary,
with the year ahead, for
yours.
some people, that's not far enough ahead. They
right,
really
and you
needed
have to market it, and the marketing team needs to work on it as well.
Yeah. The marketing team. That would be me.
Right.
And then, as I mentioned, it's half full. So the other one is that was a little far in advance. So the South America trip came out of going to the SATW's West Coast Conference in May. So it basically came out of an invitation that I got from there. So I've known about that one for a while. The conferences obviously get booked when they get scheduled, and then we try and figure out what to do around that.
Right.
Last year, when I was in Athens, I won a Eurail pass. So now my wife and I have to figure out when can we get to Europe when she can come, because she has to have vacation time that we can take 2 weeks and take a train around probably Eastern Europe, because we haven't done much in Eastern Europe. So we haven't really started to plan that one yet. But I would say for us, a year is really very far ahead for us to know. That's weird. A month is more common if it's something that I'm doing with just a press trip or something like that, because the last minute press trip things, those can come up even a week ahead of time. It's amazing how little notice you can get for some of those things.
I get invites almost every week, and several of them are for travel between a week and a month out.
Yeah, I'm just always continually surprised by how little notice there are for some of those. I don't get nearly as many invites as you, it sounds like, Jen.
Well, maybe not every week at this time of the year, but I would say the last third of the year, I'm probably getting at least 2 to 3 invites a month. The last third of the year. For some reason, that's a heavy time.
Interesting. It's funny, for me, I just sent out, so at the end of the year, I update my media kit. I send it to you guys with, the numbers for Amateur Traveler, for This Week in Travel, for all those things, and then I send it out to literally a list of between 500 and 600 PR and marketing
Wow, good for you, Chris.
that I have on my list. But it's also amazing that when you send to that many people in DMOs, to destination marketing organizations, tourism boards, and how many people have left and moved on. How you basically have to kind of retell your story to a whole new set of people almost every year. It feels like you meet somebody at the tourism board, maybe you go on a trip with them, you hit it off, and then they leave, or you meet them at a conference, and how often that those contacts really, unless they go someplace else interesting, they just don't stay very long in a lot of those positions, as a rule. Now, I noticed that Rich Grant from Denver retired after 35 years there, but that's unusual.
So I just want to get back to the travel element. What I think it's so cool that you guys do have trips available with you. I think that's so cool that people can take a trip with you. How you've been doing that for a while. I know, Chris, you did one in Egypt.
Right.
And Gary, when was your first one?
My first what?
The first time
Gary
you
trip.
Invited people to travel with you and go on your trip, whether it was for photographing.
You've done 3 now, is that right?
2012. So, yeah. So, 2012, 13, 14.
But have you guys ever done one with somebody? Have you ever seen like a trip that you really wanted to take and jumped on with them?
Well, I saw Gary's trip up the African coast and really wanted to, but no, I didn't jump on with him. No, I haven't done one with somebody. No.
I did this year. I did a road trip with Shannon O'Donnell.
Oh, where was that? Was that Canada?
No, in Africa. We flew to Victoria Falls from Johannesburg, and then we drove from Johannesburg to Cape Town.
Oh, I missed that.
Who organizes these things? If I wanted to just go on a trip and say, hey, who wants to hang out with me? Come on, let's go. Do I have to go through a tour organizer? Because I don't have a slant. Gary, you have photography. I guess I could do family travel. Like, I would just raise my hand and say, hey, who wants to come with me and Cora to Atlantis?
Well, that'd be easier to do. With the kind of trip that Gary's doing or the kind of trip I'm doing in Morocco, both of us are using a tour company on the back end. Gary's using G Adventures, and that's fairly public.
Right.
I'm not using G Adventures, but the tour company I'm using is very well known. It's on the website, but I don't mention them in the show because I told them I'd charge them extra if I wanted to get their name out. So.
Good for you, Chris.
I would never try to do this by myself.
It's a lot of work.
It's not just the logistics, but insurance reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
If something happens,
I don't think there's anybody that does this for family travel. At least I haven't heard about it.
Well, some of the major tour operators do family travel, although for as young as Cora is, that limits it a little bit. Some of the small group tours, I think of G Adventures, Intrepid, some of those guys, I think they do as young as like 8, but it might depend on the trip too. Now, but again, something like going to Atlantis, or going a cruise or something like that, where people can book independently, that's different. That's easier to do. In fact, we were going to do at one point, 2010, I was trying to book a podcaster cruise, basically a podcaster conference at sea, and I was working with a friend who's a travel agent, and just working with her, with somebody who does cruises all the time, so we could book that. The problem was just trying to get enough people who were interested to go. So it was more of a marketing issue than it was a booking or travel issue.
Okay, well, I will say now.
You could do that easily.
What'd you say?
If you wanted to just say go to Atlantis, you could contact their sales department, I think,
Sure.
and say, okay, I want to do something. We'll need 8 rooms, and for that, you could probably do it on your own. So, for example,
Right.
I've thought of doing some photography workshops where we wouldn't be traveling around. We would just find a hotel, like at a national park or something, and it would be like 3 or 4 days. That is something I could do on my own, maybe. But I wouldn't.
Well, Cora wants to snorkel. Cora wants to snorkel. So where do you suggest would be a good, easy snorkel, easy yet still interesting and exotic? It would still feel like a treat to go for snorkeling.
Well, there's a lot of places. My kids learned to snorkel in Hawaii, both in Maui and in the Big Island. The Big Island on the Kona coast is a great place. You can see turtles and things like that.
Okay, so I haven't been to the Big Island yet.
Yeah, no.
Well, let me just test the waters. If any of our listeners have kids, I don't want any non-parental pervs coming on, a snorkeling trip with me and Cora.
How about those of us who have kids, but the kids would not necessarily come? Let's see.
Chris, you are approved.
I'm approved.
You're pre-approved, but people I don't know.
This is a very diplomatic way of saying you don't want me on the trip.
I didn't. No. You guys are pre-approved. I'm saying I don't want somebody I don't know to come
No, you
on
don't
a
want
family
people with
travel
no kids,
Gen Leo trip.
except for Chris.
I've got kids. I just don't have young kids anymore.
I think Gary would be so bored on a family travel trip. But maybe he could be the official photographer.
I don't know that Gary would be any more bored with families than he would be with adults. So I really don't know that that's true.
Oh, Gary, I think that was just a cut down. But no, in all seriousness, should I look into this? Would any of our listeners be interested in going on a short, no more than 5 days, maybe a long weekend or something, family travel-oriented trip with me and Cora sometime this summer? If you do, hit me up on Twitter or on our This Week in Travel Facebook page and let me know. I'm just testing the waters. Should I even look into this? Just because it would be fun for me, I don't know if it would be fun for anybody else. I'd say age range 10 years old
interested
and
in a
younger.
similar trip with me, hit me up on Twitter or Facebook.
So interested in a family travel trip with Gary? Is that what you're saying, Gary?
Yes, well, pre-family travel.
All right, moving on.
Actually, what's your limit for how far you'd want to fly with Cora?
Well, I mean, her dad just has a little lockdown on it. It has to be a safe place. It has to be, and safer than you would go.
Well, no, actually what I was thinking is flights from LA. If you want a really good place to snorkel that's very affordable, safe, is to go to like the Yasawa Islands in Fiji.
Okay, and is that a $2,000 plane ticket?
No. If you fly, I think it's Air Fiji, you can find some really, it's kind of almost a discount airline for the Pacific. You may have to do some research, but I don't think it's a $2,000 ticket at all.
I put it in the $1,000 range, though. Am I wrong there, Gary?
You have to check, and I think it's highly dependent on the time of year.
Tell me the name again. Tell me the name again.
I think it's Air Fiji. It used to be Air Pacific.
So what part of Fiji?
Their name.
What's the destination?
Oh, the Yasawa Islands. So if you look at a map, you'll see there's the main island. On the western side is a city called Nadi, but it's spelled N-A-D-I. There's like an N that's not in there that's pronounced. And then you'll see a chain of islands that go up the west side. Those are called the Yasawa Islands. And there's like 30 little resorts, and I use that term loosely, that are all run by the local villages. And for about 50, 60, maybe $40 a night, you can get a bungalow right next to the beach and all your meals included.
What?
This is not
$50
luxury.
a night?
Yeah, this is not luxury. I mean, this is kind of backpacker. But you're on a place where there's maybe like one village, so there's no big city crime or anything like that. The people are really friendly. Fijians are wonderful people. They speak English.
Love kids.
Currency's pegged to the dollar, and some of the best snorkeling you're going to see anywhere. This is where the Blue Lagoon was shot. Nearby, Tom Hanks' Castaway was shot there. So,
Gary, this is a brilliant suggestion. You are pre-approved.
We just did an episode on Fiji with David Brody on Amateur Traveler. So David did a series of videos also. He was just there with his family, and I believe his kids are one a little younger than Cora and one a little older.
And why didn't you have Gary on?
Why didn't I have Gary on? Because Gary can't come on and talk about everything. Gary needs to do his own podcast if he wants to do that.
If the Amateur Traveler is a house made of brick, I am the mortar. I am the grout.
Fiji was way too big a place. See, Gary only talks about the small places, on all the small micro-states of Europe we have done with Gary. All the little islands. We just don't do anything big with Gary.
In all seriousness, though, I mean, living on the West Coast, there's a lot of great stuff in the Pacific. Like, there's a flight, I still think they do it, it's once a week that goes from LA to Auckland, but they stop in Samoa. And you can get off in Samoa and visit Samoa. And again, wonderful people, small little place, affordable once you get there. And the trick is just the flight. But if you can find a deal on that, it's a place that I think, if you're Australian or you're a Kiwi, that's kind of in their backyard, so there's a lot of people you'll find that visit those islands. But Americans just kind of don't do it. And I think that it's something more people should consider. I love the Pacific. It's a wonderful area.
Gary, I'm looking it up on Skip Lagged right now.
I don't know if you're going to find it on that particular one. That is an area of the world that is probably not very good for that site. Flights there can be really, really confusing. Actually, the only guidebook that I've purchased in 8 years of traveling was the Moon's Guide to the South Pacific by David Stanley, which was a fine book, but the problem was all of the flight information was out of date by the time I had bought it. And it wasn't the author's fault, it was just the nature of the region. Airlines come and go, flight routes get changed. It was very difficult for me to plan stuff. It'd be much easier today because the internet's so much better, but back in 2007 it was kind of a pain.
Yeah, I wouldn't rely
on anyways, is there anything more you guys want to talk about before we move on?
I need to get back to work.
A resounding no. Actually, why don't you just give a brief update about your Blogger Bridge project?
Well, we made Blogger Bridge to connect companies with bloggers. We are doing a webinar this Friday to introduce some new features in Blogger Bridge, including a Blogger Bridge Lite for small DMOs and such that can still get the word out. They can't get all the search features, they can't get the project management, but you can at least get the word out about why you're interested in working with bloggers, and also find people who are coming to your destination. So that's only $200 a year. So we're hoping to get 1,000 different ones, hotels and restaurants and DMOs and such. We'll see if that is a good strategy, but that's a new change, and there's some other changes that have simplified some of the interface that we'll be showing off on Friday.
Excellent. You got any projects you're working on, Jen? You guys seem to have something in the works.
Oh, secret projects, Gary. Secret projects. I definitely want to. Come out with something new this year. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it'll be travel related. I'm probably going to do a redesign and reboot Best Kids apps again. But are we doing travel tips? Because I've got one.
We are now.
Travel tips, or are we just talking about ourselves? Yeah, trust me. I will announce anything that I'm doing when I do it. So while I was sick this December, I binge watched Downton Abbey finally, and just wanted to let everybody know that if you did want to visit it, you can now visit it. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I think it's called Highclere Castle in Newbury, in Berkshire, and it is going for $545 per night. But if you are the ultimate fan, you can go check out Highclere Castle, the posh British mansion.
So when you say
the one,
Visit it. You mean visit and stay there?
You can stay in a section of the Downton Abbey castle. Yes. Isn't that exciting?
I think if I had ever seen that show, I would be very excited at this moment.
Yes.
I apparently haven't been sick enough recently that I have caught up on Downton Abbey.
Chris, I can't picture you binging anything.
Oh, no, I absolutely binge watch things.
You do? What?
Oh, absolutely. Whatever I'm behind on. The last show that I binge watched was Resurrection.
Okay. I've also recently enjoyed Blacklist with
Okay.
James
Oh,
Spader.
yes. I watched all the premiere of the second half of season 2 is going to be after the Super Bowl, so they're giving it like a prime spot. Yeah, but so if you like watched all what I love about it is that they kind of resolve something every week, but then there's a brand new question that gets kind of put in the mix. That's like, okay, well then what about this? No, yeah, it's an excellent show. Surprised it hasn't gotten even more attention.
I'm
the other ones I watched,
surprised you have the time to relax and actually watch a show, Gary.
Oh yeah, I kind of just, like I said, do it in bursts. Here, I'll give my my tip. I think in the past I've talked about some of the VPN stuff I've used. Wetopia is the VPN I primarily use, which kind of lets me tunnel into whatever. There's all sorts of uses for it. But if you just want to use video, it's like you just want to do Hulu and Netflix when you're traveling, there is a site called Media Hint. And what it is, it's an extension you can get for Chrome or Firefox. And it will basically, for any video site you go to, it'll make it think that you're coming in from the United States. So I have both a Netflix and a Hulu Plus account. And with it, I can just, without having to fire up the VPN, I can watch a lot of the shows. So I watch a lot of like the Fox animated shows like Family Guy and Bob's Burgers. I also watch the CW superhero shows like Arrow and The Flash and the new Gotham series. And, of course, I have to watch my stories, a.k.a. professional wrestling. Oh, it's a really good show that's only on Hulu. Well, I shouldn't say it's only on Hulu. It's actually an original series by WGN out of Chicago. It's called Manhattan, and it's on Hulu Plus. And
That's the one about the Manhattan Project.
Yeah, it's about the Manhattan Project, and it's a really interesting show. Their season 1 just finished, and they ordered a season 2. No idea when that's going to come out. And most importantly, I think within a week or two, Season 6 of Community is going to be coming out. Now, Community used to be on NBC, and it got canceled and brought back, canceled and brought back, and then finally it got canceled after Season 5. Season 6 is coming back on Yahoo. So Yahoo picked it up,
right,
and you're going to be able to watch it on Yahoo. So that's something I'm looking forward to as well. So Media Hint's the pick, and then all those other shows on top of it.
Well, and Gary, it's actually a good thing that you're using that, because with Wetopia being a VPN solution, my understanding is that Netflix is starting to crack down on not allowing you to view things if you're on a VPN because they're assuming you're out of the country. And so they're probably getting pushback from their media partners. They just announced that within the last week.
No, I've experienced it a couple times. That's why there have been times where I've actually used both Wetopia and Media Hint together, and the 1-2 combination of that kind of works. Lately, from here in Spain, I've just been able to get by using Media Hint, but it's always good to have a backup plan. Yeah, they've been cracking down on the VPN services, which I'm always kind of confused by, because if I have a Netflix or Hulu account, they know what country I live in based on my credit card and billing information.
Right.
I don't know why they care if they view it when I'm traveling.
I doubt they care, but I assume the licensing is that they have not licensed it for outside the U.S. and they have to pay more.
But even still, the licensing is usually on local television, and if it's traveling and you're a citizen, I don't know why they would care. Even the companies that...
The way the contracts work. My hint is an interesting site. I don't know what I think of it yet, but TravelStarter.com is like a Kickstarter for tourism projects. So if you want to help set up a nature lodge on the island of Hvar, Croatia, for instance, this is your site. So it's people who are setting up apartment houses and hostels and such who are crowdfunding them. I think it's just really getting off the ground now. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know if people really want to spend money to help kickstart tourism projects, but I thought it was interesting that it exists, travelstarter.com.
Is it just donations, or is it loans like Kiva?
I think it is just donations, which is why I'm not sure it's going to work. That's at least what how most of these work so far, is that they're just...
My only comment on this is every so often you see someone come up with a new site. They try to be the Facebook or whatever, the blank for travel.
Yeah.
The problem is you could just use Kickstarter.
Right.
You know, and it has a bigger audience, so you'd probably be better off using it. It's just like,
that's...
you know, if you had...
Oh, we had a guy who was doing a Kickstarter. Who was that guy that was doing all 56 countries in Africa or something like that? Remember we had him on? Chris, it might have just been you and me. Andrew?
No. Francis.
Tappan. Yeah.
That's it.
No, and he did it too. He raised his $20,000 to do the pilot, and I think
he's about 2 years into a 4-year trip right now, I think. He was just on Rick Steves' podcast. No, he's still in the middle. He just did an update on Rick Steves'.
He finished his trip. I mean, he was finished with his...
his Kickstarter, No, he finished the Kickstarter. Yeah.
I liked his videos.
Yep. No, he's been on Amateur Traveler also, most recently talking about the Western Sahara.
A place I also was this year.
Which may or may not be Morocco, depending on who you talk to. But.
Well, I found some... tune into LATimes.com travel section, because my web buzzes in the past, I don't know, maybe I turned them in ahead, so I don't really know. But I'd say maybe from last week to next week, I found some pretty cool apps. So tune into LATimes.com travel to see some worthy travel app reviews.
All right. Anything else before we wrap things up?
Did a show on Little Rock, Arkansas in Amateur Traveler most recently.
And how was that? I've never been to Little Rock.
I enjoyed Little Rock. We were there very briefly on that road trip that I mentioned that we went through the Midwest, where we went to Kansas City, Little Rock, Memphis, Nashville, Louisville, and Cincinnati all in a week. But so we blew through Little Rock rather quickly, but we went to the Clinton Presidential Library there, which was enjoyable. It's a pretty area, actually.
If Hillary Clinton becomes president, you think they would save money and just like put it in one library? I mean, call it the Clintons Presidential Library?
I do not know.
I like that.
About those things.
All right, guys. Well, happy New Year.
Let's do our plugs. Chris, where can people find you online?
You can find me at amateurtraveler.com, and as Gary mentioned, also at bloggerbridge.com if you happen to be somebody who is with a company looking to reach out to content creators.
Jen, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter and at JenLeo, and on Instagram at VegasJenLeo. Speaking of Vegas, I just did a lengthy post on recommendations for a budget-minded girlfriend getaway in Vegas. I did a little custom post for some friends who were going out to Vegas, so you can find that on jenleodeals.com.
And you can find me on Ello at ello.co/Gary Arndt, because all the cool kids are on Ello nowadays. Until next time, get outside, and wherever you go in 2015, make sure to make it a good one.